Welcome to the Winning E-Commerce Experience Show, where it's all about creating a brand that your customers love so they keep coming back. This show is brought to you by DataCue. Your store experience begins with your homepage. DataCue improves your conversion rate up to 30% by showing each visitor a personalized homepage based on their interest. And now, your host, Shahram Anver.
Hey guys, our guest today is an expert in buyer psychology. His passion is studying what creates and removes friction during the buying process. Rishi Rawat, great to have you with us, man.
Hey, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were just talking about what a small world e-commerce is. We just got introduced by a podcast guest we had a few weeks ago, Josh, and then I think we both did another podcast together on Honest E-commerce. So pretty small world, right?
It really is. Yeah, it's funny. As big as the e-commerce universe is, it's also, you find like 2 degrees away, you find a lot of common connections.
I know, and it also just makes you think about with e-commerce growing so rapidly and things changing so quickly, you also have this segment of things that never change, right? Like these basic 101 stuff, which is why I'm really excited to get into the conversation with you today. Like, how have you felt? I mean, you've been in this space for a while. Like, have you noticed this too, with like these really basic stuff and then stuff that's changing?
You know, it's so interesting. I mean, yeah, I mean, because I've been maintaining a journal for the last 10 years that I've been running my business, and I actually go back and I revisit some of the bright ideas that I had 10 years ago, and it turns out that actually my ideas 10 years ago were way better than the ideas I'm having now. And I think what happens is that we tend to over-engineer stuff. We know something and we want to get to a deeper truth. And sometimes there isn't a deeper truth. And so we tend to overcomplicate things. And before we know it, we've actually got a jumbled mess. So in a weird way, I think just resetting the mind and kind of going back to first principles or going back to the basic truths and not worrying about the fact that, one of the thoughts that I had before this interview was, I was like, I'm going to be presenting things in this call or in this interview that some of your audience might look at and say, this is so obvious. But I think that's a good thing. I think most of us tend to actually, the obvious things are being overlooked. I mean, if you look at e-commerce, if you look at economics, running a business has 2 principles. You either make someone more money or help them save money. That's it. Those
Exactly.
2 things. If you don't do those 2 things, you don't have a business. And
Exactly.
So whether you're an oil refinery or you're a pharmaceutical company, it's the same principle. So you don't have to overcomplicate things and just focus on the basic truths. And I think that, so yeah. So,
but Rishi, I got to hold you to this. Can you share at least one of those ideas that you had 10 years ago that turned out to be like very prescient? I'd love to hear one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. So like, I'll put it this way. So some of the tests that I ran, so let's think about, like, one of the tests that I ran 10 years ago was, we were doing this kind of crazy experiment where we wanted to kind of give users a discount, and I wanted to study irrational behavior. I've been very fascinated by, are people rational actors or are they not? And
they're not, right?
At this point, I had no data. Say it again.
They're not, right?
Sorry?
My assumption is no.
I'm sorry.
My assumption is no.
Yeah, people aren't rational at all.
Yeah.
The answer is no. And what happened was, I was working for a client where they had their bestseller, and we noticed that their bestseller, even though this was selling the most number of units overall, it actually had a pretty low conversion rate compared to the site average, which was quite surprising to the CEO. So his response was, let's give people a $10 discount. And let's give them a coupon code on this page. And I said, well, instead of using that $10 coupon code, can I try something that I've been dying to try? And he said, okay, sure. And I ran an experiment where we ran an A/B test. For the control group, the price was $98. For the test group, the price was $98, as one would expect. When you clicked on the add to cart button, when you went to the cart page, for the control group, it was $98 on the cart page, which is exactly what you'd expect. However, for the test group, we changed the price on the cart page to $96. So we gave a $2 discount, but we didn't give any explanation for whether we gave a discount. We didn't say why we gave a discount. We just changed the price to $96. And I wanted to see what would happen to the cart completion rates for the test group. Now, rationally speaking, if I had a retail store and I was selling a product for $98 and I walked up to a customer and I said, I'll give you a $2 discount, it really should have a minimal or maybe no effect at all on purchase intent, because it's too small a number. Because if someone is not buying it because it's $98, they also probably shouldn't buy it if it's $96.
Right.
What's really surprising about this test, and this is something we ran 10 years ago, was that we noticed a 20% improvement in cart completion rates for people that were shown that discounted price, the $96.
Without even telling them it was a discount.
We didn't explain, we didn't tell them it's a discount, right? And so can you guess what really happened? Can you understand? Can you guess the buyer psychology of what happened with that? Why did 20% more people buy?
Did they feel like maybe there was some kind of bug in the site and they had to get it done quickly?
Exactly right. So what's crazy about this is that their incentive, their mental calculus shifted from, do I want to spend $98 on, do I want to spend $96 on this product, to, I've unexpectedly saved $2 right now. What am I going to do about it? And it overrode their overall calculus, right? And so that's why there was a 20% increase. And this was a very innovative concept that we test. Now, we were never going to permanently implement this. The idea was to really understand price sensitivity. But this is something that I tested like 10 years ago, and I have not retested some of those ideas today. So I think my point is that I've become a lot more conservative. You know, when I didn't know back then what would happen. And so I think this is an example of something, a basic idea or a basic insight that I had about buyer psychology 10 years ago that I was able to test because I had nothing to lose. And now we are much more cautious about what we are testing. And I think as a result of that, I would argue that our breakthrough insights are fewer than what we used to have 10 years ago.
Right, because we're sort of more conservative about the tests that we're doing. Right, so maybe it's time to reopen that box and bring out those. But I think this is a really good sort of introduction to the kind of discussion which we're going to have, which I'm very excited about, because we're essentially saying there's so many things that have changed about e-commerce, but there's these really basic things, and buyer psychology is basically the most fundamental process of your e-commerce site. You're essentially building a site to convince someone to shop with you, right? So why don't you just sort of give us a quick recap of your experiences with buyer psychology, and what are sort of those principles that you've applied? Because I know that in a little bit, we're going to be doing a real life example, but I think it would be helpful to tell the viewers, sort of like give them a grounding before we get to that.
Yeah. I mean, so I remember, many years ago, reading somewhere online, some web marketer was talking about how e-commerce is so different than traditional forms of marketing. And they were trying to draw this distinction that, we're in a new frontier. We need a whole new tool set. We need to bring on young people that are, trained for this specific medium. I want to share with you guys something very quick. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to bring it right here. This is the single most valuable thing that I own. So if you can see, there's a reflection, but this is a reprint.
Sears Roebuck Consumer's Guide.
Copy, but it's a reprint of an 1897 Sears catalog. I just show you guys the insides of it. You can see this is how catalogs used to be. There's drawings instead of having photographs. I want to just to give some context. This company Sears existed in Chicago, and we're talking about, this is 1897. So this is like over 120 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
And what was happening was that they were sending out these catalogs to small towns in small places, far off places in America. And people would receive these catalogs. They would read this font size 4, which is such a big no-no these days. No images, just drawings, and they would tell stories about clothes. They were selling clothes. They were selling, hairbrushes. They were selling all kinds of things. And they would say, the story was, send us advance payment. You have never met us. Send us advance payment to a city of Chicago, which you've never visited. And after a couple of weeks, we will actually send you the product, and then you will receive it. So that, that was the sales pitch. I don't think people recognize how good you have to be as a copywriter in that environment, right?
Sure.
And so it is shocking to me when I read the copy and the stories these guys tell. I mean, it makes me tear up. So when I look at modern copywriting, I feel that, we are fooling ourselves into believing that we have these special skills, these special insights. I think these copywriters from 120 years ago would pretty much destroy me every single day if they competed against me. So I take a lot of inspiration from these kinds of old manuscripts of copywriting. So I don't think principles of copywriting have changed. I mean, I would say one controversial thing right now. I mean, if you were to poll marketers, right, all marketers in the world, I would say 95% of them would say that less people don't read, so let's trim down copy. You'll see on product pages on websites, copy has been systematically being trimmed down. Maybe sometimes it's replaced by a video, so maybe it's a displacement, but oftentimes it's not even done. That's not even what happens. I mean, just the copy content goes down, we probably add more images and we show more reviews, for example. I would argue that copy is just as effective and just as important as it's always been. I think what is happening is that user attention and tolerance for garbage copy or fluffy copy or one-sided copy is very low. So when they see that, and people are easily distracted, so they tend to react much faster to it. Also, if you were to poll users and ask them, like, hey, do you like more copy? Do you like less copy? They would
less copy.
They would say less copy. But I think that basing your copy strategy based on what the audience wants is as stupid as basing your pricing strategy based on the discounts people want. Of course, if you ask them for a discount, they would say, yes, a 95% discount is great. You don't change your pricing because of that, right? So I think the same is true for copywriting. Your job as a copywriter is to persuade and convert a first-time buyer. If you can do that with 20,000 words, hey, good for you. If you can do that in 100 words, good for you. Your job is to persuade and convert. If you can't do that, then your copy isn't working. That's kind of how I look at it.
Excellent. I mean, and what I like about that is it's you're right. It's something which people have actually started doing less of, where they're trying to go for the more gimmicky, like more pop-ups, more flashing. And well, you talked about biopsychology, and one thing I found is that it seems that people are now almost slowly turning away from these gimmicky kind of things, where now I think, I was reading this user study where if people see this animated image, they immediately assume it's an ad and they don't even look at it.
Right.
Like, we run a SaaS, and I found that when I sent these very pretty HTML emails, they had a far lesser click rate than just a plain text bit of thing where people are like, okay, this looks like from a real person, this one looks like it's from a machine. I was just thinking that when you were talking about it,
we found the same results with product videos. We found when we over engineer the product video, when it's like highly stylized, with perfect lighting, it costs 10 times more. It's actually less effective because it sounds like for the user, it sounds like over marketing. People are very allergic to over marketing, right? And so you actually, in many ways, having the CEO just kind of put his webcam on or his cell phone on and say, here's a product I've invented. I love it. If you go to Kickstarter, for example, you'll find some of these videos. They're very effective. They seem authentic. They seem not overproduced, which is exactly what people are looking for.
Right. It just makes me think about how how there's this saying where everything that was old is now new again, and that's what I'm thinking about it, because like human beings, like all of us, we're really creatures of habit, right? It's almost like this wave. It's almost like a sine curve, which you get too much into this side and then the market reacts and then you go back down here. So I guess at some point, maybe 20 years from now, Rishi, we might be having a podcast and we might be saying, you know what, guys, too much copy, guys, cut that down. Let's go into
no, you are exactly right. So in fact, one of the key things about buyer psychology is the element of surprise. So think of marketing as being a psychological warfare between the seller and the buyer. The buyer does not want to be sold
Hopefully
to.
Not so aggressive, but I get you.
The seller wants to do everything we can to sell. And so the thing is that every time the buyer picks up on a trick of the seller has to then innovate and improvise. Now, and this is, one of the things, in fact, on my website, I actually mentioned this. We have a button at the footer of the website that says our views on ethical A/B testing. I think I'm probably the only person in the world who actually talks about this.
Right.
and the reason I say this is because I think right now marketers actually have a disproportionate advantage over consumers. There is just this incredible disparity between asymmetry between the power of marketers versus the average consumer. Again, I'm talking about the average consumer. I'm not talking about me selling to you. You're sophisticated, but you're not my target audience. And so I think we have a responsibility, a moral responsibility to, especially when it comes to buyer psychology, when you're trying to use these underlying subconscious methods of persuasion, that you're also kind of being very clear about the fact that, what is the, of your moral responsibility. And I think this is something that we take pretty seriously, and it's a fine line. Marketing is a real fine line. And so from my perspective, I think at this point, marketers have an advantage, but over time, consumer advantage is going to change again, and then we'll have to adapt and all of that. But at all points, we want to always play fair. So we're trying to get people to buy our product. We're trying to, because we truly, first of all, we have to really ask ourselves, is our product really good or not? If it's not good, then, as a market, and I don't think there's any agency in the world that actually tests, interviews their clients, right? But I think we should have some kind of moral compass when we decide on what products to go behind.
But hey, Rishi, you brought up this point about how, people are really reacting to being over-marketed too. So do you feel that this is sort of a sign that the tides are changing, that maybe marketers had such disparity and there was so much, let's say, like, for lack of a better word, abuse of this power, that now people are really tired of this and now they want more authenticity. They don't want more automated emails. I've actually seen companies now which send me these emails and there's a PS which says, yes, I know this is automated, but I'm actually looking at this. So it's not that automated. Like it's almost like a sheepish, like, sorry, but not sorry. So maybe it's turning the tide a little bit. I don't know.
No, I'm a skeptic. I don't think so. I don't think unless if there is, and this is a whole different discussion, but I guess more broadly speaking, I mean, I don't see any shift from where I sit. I think that yes, consumers are becoming more sophisticated, but I think just the multiplier effect of technology. I mean, today I can actually map out anonymized movements of my target audience across a whole bunch of different properties. I mean, it's like God mode for marketing, right? And so I think there is something to be said about how much power marketers have. Now, I think marketing has also become a lot more complicated. So as a result, most marketers use only 20% of the power that's available to them, but they have access to a lot of power, which really makes me, anyway.
You should just go ahead and quote Spider-Man: "With great power comes great responsibility."
No, absolutely right. And I do think that, of course, most marketers do it correctly. And I think technology has really enabled us to kind of, to market to people effectively. We have to be responsible. That said, even this Sears catalog from 120 years ago is using kind of, persuasive techniques that are designed to get people to buy products. And so I don't think it's not like we're doing anything. I don't think it's like we're doing anything different today. I think we just we have turbo power now to do it at scale. So I think consumers are aware of the fact that marketers and advertisers are going to sell to them, and I think they make their own judgments on what products they want to go behind versus not.
And I think that like essentially what we're talking about right today is like with copywriting. It's probably low on that scale of potential risk to breach ethics, right? Unless you are doing something like flat out immoral where you're just lying in your copy or you're making claims that don't exist. I don't think that there's very little that you can, I'd say it's not as bad from an ethical perspective as perhaps some of the more black ops kind of, split testing, very magical things which most consumers sort of don't get. So from what I've heard, like with copywriting, I think essentially your point here is that the whole e-commerce industry has been moving towards more gimmicky stuff and copywriting has been reduced. But we know that this is like 100-plus-year-old technique that's worked extremely well. So maybe it's time to bring that back. And there are some very effective ways to do it to convince your potential consumer or customer to go ahead and trust you and make that purchase with you.
Yeah, and I would say the one underlying comment I would add over here is that there is something called system one and system two. I'll not talk about it in great detail, but in very simple terms, it's the rational side, or the system two is when the brain is like cognitively aware of what it's doing, and then system one is our emotional and our impulsive response to things. The point I would make over here is that most marketing is taking place, marketers are focused on the system two mode, which is where we talk about features and benefits. I am primarily focused on the system one mode. So I'm trying to really appeal to the emotional side of the buyer, which is really where I think there's an opportunity to actually really persuade the user beyond just stating the product features and benefits, which is kind of limited. And so those examples I'm going to show you right after this are going to be really focused on influencing that system one mode, which is the emotional side.
Amazing. I can't wait. Let's get to it.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Do I share my screen, correct?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So let me just get this set. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you guys, first of all, I'm going to show one case study, and I'm going to be very quick about this. I'll just show it from a client's website. So this is a website called handicappets.com, and they're an amazing company. They've been selling dog wheelchairs for the last 15 years. And what they do is they essentially manufacture these wheelchairs that are designed for different types of dogs and stuff. And so I want to show you an example of actually how copywriting actually makes a difference. So the control group, so the what we tested was, and I should show you just the product. So basically the client, as any retailer, wants to draw people's attention to the product pages as quickly as possible, because my job as a marketer is to get out of the way, let people tell me what kind of wheelchair they're looking for, whether it's a rare wheelchair, whether it's for all four wheels, whether it's a front wheelchair. And then I want to kind of tell them about that specific product. And we kind of made a different conclusion. We said that people coming to this page are new to the website. They've never bought a wheelchair. They have a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of questions. They're buying the wheelchair for their beloved dog or their beloved pet. They have questions about, is it going to be comfortable for them? Is it difficult to assemble? Is it going to be durable? Can my dog pee and poop with the wheelchair? These are all questions that people were having. We felt, and this shows you the power of copywriting, that we need to actually do something blasphemous, which is take the focus away from a product and take the focus to copywriting. So what we did is we actually tested this version of the page. This is what won. And you'll notice we actually don't even show the product. There's no mention of the product. And we really focused in on, we wanted to show a video for how the dog uses the wheelchair, which we thought was persuasive. And then we're basically talking about the relationship human beings have with their pets, because that is the central emotional driver for a person looking for a wheelchair. We wanted to kind of acknowledge that. And then over here, it says, why buy from us? We wanted to kind of help the buyer understand why Handicap Pets is, are uniquely positioned to create wheelchairs. What makes us unique? Because that's the question that the user has when they first identified that their dog is suffering and they need to buy a wheelchair, or they need to buy some mechanism to relieve their discomfort. Their first concern is, why should I have a relation? Why should I trust this company, Handicap Pets? I've never met them. I'm going to buy online. This costs hundreds of dollars. And so for us, we thought it would be much more effective to focus in on telling buyers about what makes this company unique. And then we showed them this button where when you click on it, now we're showing the products. And and I want to just tell you very quickly about the test results. So we had a 38% improvement in conversion rates of people that were part of our experiment, and we evaluated this statistically. So I think at a very broad level, this is an example where this is a good counterexample to demonstrate that you don't have to just focus on the product. Depending on what part of the funnel the user is, what part of the buying process the user is coming from, you actually are better off focusing on copy, because copy allows you to tell a story that primes them, which then gets them to convert. So I just want to quickly share that.
No, that's amazing. I mean, I think it goes into this notion that the best thing you can do as a marketer is to understand your customer. And what you just demonstrated is that you were able to sort of identify emotionally with the customer and know that, you know what, the first thing they want to know is not how many types of dog wheelchairs there are. It's like this emotional question. So, you know, so, you know, I think it's very clear that the kind of approach you would take is different depending on the business. Now, you know, I don't want people listening to this thinking, okay, I have to do exactly this for my business. That doesn't make sense. I think, you know, what Rishi's really talked about here is like really connecting with what this particular customer was thinking. So, you know, as you know, for everyone listening, you should think about what is that first question which your customer would have, and hopefully you know that, and maybe you can ask people about it. But I think what's interesting now is how can people actually do a test like this? So, you know, are there like any easy to use tools like say Google Optimize or things like that? Because you mentioned a lot of concepts like making sure it's statistically significant. These are all quite advanced kind of topics. I don't want to get into all of that right now, but let's say you've got someone and they're able to whip up a new landing page with a new hypothesis. How would they go about it?
That's a great question, and I would mention that, you know, unless if you have significant transaction volume, it's very difficult to actually get to a statistical winner unless if what you're testing is extremely radical. So I would say, and this is why I'm going to keep the rest of the presentation focused on first principles. I think a lot of the people that are watching this right now would want to test some of these ideas. But unless you are selling, you know, 800 to 1,000 units a month, maybe even more, it's actually difficult to get to a statistical result. And you want to be careful about false positives, and you want to be careful about false negatives as well. And so, in the case of handicap pets, they have significant transaction volume. So we were able to actually test and validate this. But I've been doing this for the last 10 years. We've worked with, you know, hundreds of online retailers. So I think what I'm going to show today are principles that we have tested aggressively and you know, effectively, but I think can be applied as a principle to any kind of e-commerce website. So I want to just add that qualification.
No, and I think that's a very important qualification, because most times when people hear don't do it, you almost feel like, no, you know what, I am going to do it and I can do it. This is not one of those instances where you want to go against sort of the advice, because the cost of going with an incorrect conclusion can be very high for your business. So, you know, I think that point about if you are, for instance, getting 10 orders a month, then the likelihood that a certain page won because it got 7 orders out of the 10, it could be completely random. It could be this one person who just wanted to buy 7 wheelchairs for their dog just on that random day. That's why this statistical significance is so important, because the moment the number is bigger, that chance for random events happening is so much lower, and you can be more clear with trusting that, right?
And there's also the time dimension. I mean, a lot, you know, you have to keep it, like a test like this, we ran for 5 weeks. So not only do we have significant transaction volume, we're actually trying to account for all of the variances that naturally take place during weekdays and weekends, and, you know, the 4th week of the month versus the 2nd week of the month. You kind of have to have a wide time horizon to actually get a representative sample.
Right. So let's get to it, Rishi. I'd love to see the 101.
All right. I'm going to quickly, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and present this, and I trust that you will kind of, you know, ask me to stop at any point if something is unclear. So let us get started. So like I mentioned, I've been doing testing for the last 10 years. I don't think I'm a very smart person. So when I started testing, I tested pretty much everything. We tested page layouts, we tested add to cart button colors, we tested everything. And then very quickly, I started realizing that, you know, that there are certain themes of tests, there are certain types of tests that actually we had better control on the outcomes. So what I mean by that is that, you know, you can change the layout of a page and you'll get some kind of a result, but it's not representative. So you actually run the test again after 6 months and you find that it's not playing itself out, which means that it was either a very light improvement that kind of in the short term horizon, you know, was registering an improvement, but we weren't able to get sustained. We were looking for sustained results, and that we got through copywriting. So what I want to just kind of get into the checklist. Now, we've done hundreds and hundreds of copywriting experiments, and we've identified a few key themes that, at least from our perspective, are the most effective. And it turns out that all of these themes are appealing to the system one side of the buyer. And I'm going to go through these very quickly. Number one is that shoppers are very skeptical of too good to be true. So if you have a product that is truly incredible, don't be super excited. Be aware of the fact that, okay, wait a minute, if this is so good, then we need to address that. We need to address that so good part, right? And I'll show you guys an example for each of them. Mm-hmm. The next thing we know, what we found, again, this is not just my opinion, this is something we've tested rigorously, is that buyers find expertise very sexy. They really like to buy, just the way when my doctor tells me I need to, lose some weight, I just am so enamored by his advice that I would do it. My wife complains all the time and I just don't listen to her. There is something about, expertise that really matters. So as a copywriter, you have to ask yourself, how are we illustrating our expertise? Because obviously we are the best in the world at the products that we've invented. So we really have to demonstrate that expertise. So that's one. The next one is that buyers are very influenced by implied messages. And I know this sounds a little cryptic. I'll show you guys an example. The next one is that we root for the underdog. This is, again, a very primal instinct where we want to support people or businesses or ideas that are under disadvantage. Apple has used this beautifully when they were, competing against Microsoft.
The Mac versus PC ads, right?
Of course, now they're in a different situation and they've changed their marketing. But at that point, it was to their advantage to play to the underdog theme. And that's very persuasive. Buyers are fascinated by surprising details. So what surprising details? Products have amazing surprising details. And what happens is that because we see those details so much, they become very kind of common to us. But it's not common. Remember one thing, that the people that are buying on your website have never seen your website before. As much as you think your website is awesome and you know every nook and corner of your website, a typical buyer on your website has never seen your website before and will probably never see it again. So you want to make sure that those details that to you seem kind of like, well, everyone knows this, those details are presented. So those surprising details really matter. Also, the next one is that we are visual animals. We are incredibly visually drawn. So how do we use visuals to tell a story? Also, we're very lazy. We want to conserve energy. So if I'm looking for a blender, one of the questions that I have is that, am I going to have to now go back to Google and find 15 other blenders to compare against this blender? And if the page that I'm on can convince me that there is no need to do that, that really appeals to my lazy side. And so as a copywriter, how do we communicate that? And we'll show an example for that as well. There are a few other things. One is that given a chance, the buyer will second guess. So I'll show you an example of this, and it's very effective mechanism. We need motivation to break habits. This is the biggest thing, is that marketers are always thinking about, how do I get someone who's looking to buy my blender to not buy other blenders that are out there? That is the wrong competition. I'm not saying the other blenders don't exist, but your biggest competitor is non-blenders. It's the consumer that he's been successful, has managed somehow without a blender and has lived their life. Getting them from non-consumption to consumption is a really big hurdle. So that's what you need to figure out as a copywriter, is how do I get this person to break a habit they've already formed over a couple of years. The next aspect is that we like interacting. We are a very interactive species. So how do we get them to interact with our copy? This is something that is, I'll show you some very fun examples with that. The buyer likes knowing that they've stumbled onto something rare. So that's an important thing. And then, of course, we're narcissistic and we hate bad news. So that is our checklist. Whenever we write copy, we kind of go through this checklist. Every time we write copy, we go through the checklist again to make sure that some of these themes are being used. I'm not suggesting that all of these themes have to be used in every single piece of copy that you write. But as a copywriter, if you are a marketer, if you are aware of these emotional themes, then you can use them effectively. So the checklist will be quite useful as you're writing copy. So that's my checklist. I can actually get into the examples now, but if you had a question, I can add.
No, I think it would be really good to jump into some examples because I am looking at this checklist and I can already pick a few of these which I'm guilty of. that I haven't followed. So I'm already thinking about like, so I hope everyone listening in is going to like look at this checklist and think about how they can improve their own copy on,
Okay, cool.
on their sites. So let's go for it.
So let's talk about the first one. So this is, people are skeptical of too good to be true. So this is something we've tested extensively. So I've worked with a lot of retailers that do deep discounting. You could be a jewelry retailer, you could be selling fashion clothing, you could be selling a whole bunch of things. It's very common for marketers today to give like not very common, but there are instances where marketers are giving a 74% discount or a 75% discount.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the weird thing about price elasticity. What price elasticity states is that as the price goes down, demand, supply, units sold go up. So one would expect if you give a 20% discount, there's going to be a 20% bump in demand. That plays out pretty well. So if you go to 30% discount, you have a 30% bump in demand. But it starts breaking down after a point. So once you get into like deep discounting, what we find is that conversion rates actually start going down. They first plateau and then they start actually going down. And the reason for this is that it's too good to be true. People are now nervous, and I'll explain to you examples. So one of the questions I might have, if I'm buying, for example, a computer, and I go to Best Buy and I'm looking for an iMac. This is hypothetical, and I see it's at 75% discount. Now I'm having a lot of questions. It went from being like amazingly fortunate day that I'm on this page to now making me second guess myself. One is that, hey, maybe this iMac is going to be phased out, so I'll buy it and it's a new model will be launched tomorrow. Do I really want to do that? The second one is that, what if there's a defect in it and they're trying to get rid of their defect? The third one could be, what if this company is shutting down and they're trying to liquidate their inventory? So what is actually a very positive discount is now being perceived as being potentially negative. And so I'm going to show you an example of
what's that number you think? I mean, it's a very hard one, right? But would you say more than 40%? Like what's that number where you think people should not go above?
Well, I mean, we look at something called the look to book ratio. So when a client kind of changes their discount, so we actually study how many people came to that page and how many units that product was sold. When we start seeing a plateauing in effect in terms of like the discount is not leading to more conversion rates, we know that means that the discount is potentially now either is getting the problematic zone. I would say typically around 50%, 60%. It really varies per industry. There, like for example, for jewelry, for certain types of jewelry and clothing, people actually expect deep discounts. So 60% discount is normal. But for electronics, like on Apple, for example, if I saw a 50% discount, I would actually typically not buy, because it's like, what the heck is this? What is like, this seems like too good to be true. So
right. So it's a bit like that too good to be true test. So if you know your industry, like you should know like what prices are too good to be true and which ones are not.
And too good to be true. By the way, too good to be true is not just to be used in terms of pricing. It could be, for example, if you've invented a new product that is like 30% more effective than the best product in the marketplace, you need to be aware of the fact that some people will, I mean, obviously from one perspective, 30% improvement is an amazing improvement. But from another perspective, people might be skeptical of this. So when I say too good to be true, it's anything that the buyer might potentially consider too good to be true. So you need to kind of qualify that. Another simple example would be that if I told you that I could improve your conversion rates by 20%, and let's treat it like an A/B test. So in one version, I said I can improve by 20%. Another version, I said I can improve by 98%. I'm 100% confident that even though the second version is 4x more, 5x more than the first, so you should be 5x happier. Actually, you'll be a lot more skeptical if I said 98%, because you're like, well, I think this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Whereas 20% seems more reasonable. So it applies to any claims that you're making.
This actually happened to us exactly probably 2 weeks ago, where we made on our front page, we say that we can improve conversion rate, and we made a typo. We said by 22% instead of doing up to, which is the correct one. And then we actually did a call with the customer, and then he said, this is really good, but I have no idea how come your claim is so specific. How do you know it's going to be exactly 22%? And I was like, no, it's not. And then I looked at it and it said by 22%. I was like, oh, I get it now. And it's exactly what, the moment she read it, she was thinking, yeah, this doesn't make sense. How can it be so specific? And the moment I changed it to up to, she said, yeah, that makes more sense now. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So I've given an example over here for how a retailer could actually tell a story around discounting. So this is just one version of the story we've tested. I'm not going to even read it, but the basic idea here is that you need to craft a story that matches up with what you're doing. In this case, we've made one version of the story. For those of you who are interested, you can pause the video at this point and actually read the copy and see how you can apply it. But I won't get into this right now. I don't think it's really relevant. I think the point is that be aware of parts of your sales pitch that seem too good to be true, and make sure you're backing that up with data. That's the basic point. The next thing I want to talk about is this amazing aspect of expertise. We are so drawn to expertise. So this is the reason why, I don't take medical advice from my florist brother-in-law, right? I mean, I want to go to a doctor. I want to go to someone who's actually an expert in that, even though they might have the same advice. For some reason, if it doesn't come from an expert, I don't really respect it as much. So I've got an example over here. This is a copywriting example. So it's a made-up example that we are using to illustrate this point, but this is something we've tested extensively. So here we're looking at a company that makes a blender. So where the copy reads, centrifugal motors pulverize. That makes sense for many things, just not juicing. So it's a machine that makes juices. And we're trying to basically say that almost all juicing machines are using a centrifugal motor, which essentially pulverizes. And we're saying pulverization destroys the cellular structure of fruit. What one needs is hand kneading like action. So we invented one. It took 38 tries, but we did it. The point here is that when I'm reading this, it's very clear to me that the person who's invented this hand kneading pulverizer or hand kneading machine knows 20 times more than I do about this product. And so this is an example of really leading in with your expertise. And I'm sure there are many other ways in which we could have demonstrated our expertise. This is just one example. And in your case, you might want to use different aspects of your expertise. If you're a fashion brand, your expertise could be your eye for picking up on fashion trends. But you want to make sure you're not just making a statement that says, I'm good at picking up fashion trends. You want to kind of use the copy to subconsciously communicate your expertise. So that's the point we're trying to make here.
Rishi, is there a chance that you can share this presentation for folks to have a look at post call?
Absolutely. I can send you the link for it. I'll make it public so anyone can.
Amazing. So let's just do one more. But I think for everybody else, I think this looks like a really, really good material for going through on your own time and having a look, because I think it's really good that you've given such specific examples.
Cool. Yeah. So this is a really important one. I think this is my favorite. It's almost like the unmarketing kind of strategy. So the point here is that people are influenced by implied messages. This is something we've actually tested quite extensively. So I'm going to show you the implied version of a headline and then a stated version. So the implied version of the headline says there are 122 energy drinks on the market. We've tried them all. That's the implied version. The stated version says there are over 120 energy drinks in the market. Ours is the best. Can you guess why the implied version is, why I'm claiming that the implied version is so much more effective?
Because you are going and you're basically making a claim which you can now justify because you've said that you've actually tried them all, versus maybe the stated one is making a claim which no one can actually know if you have the right to make that claim.
Yeah, I mean, another way of looking at it is that what is happening is that there is a mental chatter that's going on in the consumer's mind as they're reading copy. So when they read this, it says there are 120 energy drinks in the market. We've tried them all. There's actually a blank over here. And the blank, the consumer will fill themselves by saying that these guys have probably tried all of these and they've decided that their product is the best. That's why they have a business. Why else would they have a business? And so now the consumer is actually filling the blank for you, which is the most effective form of marketing.
Wasn't this the same tactic Coke used with "But I only drink Coke," where the implied was Pepsi is nice, but I only drink Coke or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that specific example, but I'm sure that's exactly what they were trying to do.
I have to look into this, but I think because I guess especially with this example, what's so interesting is you're attracting that system one mindset, which is that emotional one, which you were mentioning.
Correct.
Right?
That's right. Right. I'm going to breeze through some of these other ones. People
can
just
pick your favorites.
So say it again.
Yeah, just pick your favorites.
Yeah, I'll pick my favorites. So root for the underdog, I think is pretty self-explanatory. We're surprised by surprise. We're fascinated by surprising details. Again, what can you find in your sales copy? What can you find about your product? You'll be amazed at how many amazing things, how many amazing facts and figures exist about your business. We do extensive interviews with our clients, and I find it so fascinating when we talk to our clients, the first call we have with our clients, they'll kind of just in passing mention things that blow our minds. And we're like, can you please stop and explain to us what you just said right now? They're like, oh yeah, this is one of the things that we do with our product. And like, this is amazing. Why don't you talk about this more? And I think because they see it so often, it seems common for them. So I would encourage any marketer to really spend time understanding what makes it. Think of it in very simple terms. There's a reason why a product is so successful. You need to figure out it's not like your product is not already successful. It's already successful. You just need to figure out some compelling reasons. And so, pulling up these surprising details can be quite effective. The next one is that we have visual animals. And I wanted to show I wanted to show a written example over here so you can understand that you don't have to draw a graphic to evoke a visual. So here the hotel is trying to get us to kind of not throw our towels in for a wash. And it says, by saving water, we've actually filled up 1,200 Olympic-sized pools. What's really interesting is that the moment I read this, I was able to visualize in my head like one Olympic pool, and then I saw 1,200 next to it. So it seemed like this significant volume, and it was very effective. That's exactly what they were trying. That's specifically why they used the phrase Olympic-sized pools. I'm going to show you a few other examples as well of visuals. So imagine if you are a manufacturer, and I wanted to intentionally pick a very boring example. So imagine if you're a manufacturer and you have a machine that has a response rate of 5 milliseconds. Now, if you're an engineer, you know what that is, but most of us aren't. And so how do we kind of show people how amazing 5 milliseconds are? So what we did was we created a graphic and we showed the response rate of the device, which is 5 milliseconds, and we compared it to a blink of an eye, which most people consider to be relatively fast. And now you can see how much more time it takes to blink an eye versus the device. And so this visually communicates. This makes it much more visually compelling to me.
Amazing.
Another example is, so this company, and I won't get into too much detail, but this company makes outdoor controllers that you can use to turn on and off the light on a billboard. And this is their homepage. This is how they're telling their story. So we thought this was so damn boring. We said, why not create an immersive experience for the user where they can actually
control your own lights on the page.
So what we did was we created a graphic, a banner, and it's a cell phone operated option. So what you can do is you can actually click on the light on and off switch and you can turn it off. So when you click on it, it goes off. And then when you click on it, so we made it interactive. Now we didn't test this. This is not our client, but I think this is so much more persuasive than the first example. The next one is that people are lazy. And so the point I'm just going to make over here is that, people don't want, if you're looking for a blender and you're on a certain page, the last thing I want to do is to go, and I talked about this, I don't want to go back to Google and search for the word blender and find 50 other options. I really want to make sure that I really want to just buy you. But you as a marketer need to make a compelling reason for why I should not be looking at alternatives. So I won't talk about this example. You guys can read it yourself, pause the video and read it. But you'll notice that this example specifically is building a case for don't even bother looking at competitors without saying that. And that's why implied is so much more effective than stated. So if we had said, please don't leave our website and bother looking at competitors, no one will believe it. But we are using an implied version of that same message by embedding it in our copy. So we're giving that emotional output without stating it openly. This is
I guess it's similar to the price match offers, right?
Say it again.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of websites where they do things like price match. So if you found a price that's better than our site, send it to us and we will match that price. So it's a bit like you don't have to worry about price here. We will take care of it for you.
Yeah, but that's a very kind of in your face kind of approach. I think the best copywriting is much more at a much subtler level.
Got it.
The other one is that given a chance, buyers will second guess. So I want to give you guys an example. We talked about this earlier at the top of the call. So if we show a pop-up, 95% of us are going to actually want to close the pop-up. It's so fast that we don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We all hate pop-ups equally. Unfortunately, marketers need a pop-up to get our email address. And so that's the reason why 99.5% of websites have a pop-up. So how do we actually fix this? So what we do is, in this case, is that when you click on the close button, we actually show a warning message that says this coupon doesn't have an expiration date, but the offer does, meaning that you might not see this offer again, but if you were to get the coupon code, you can use it 5 years from now. And now we're giving the user a chance to reconsider. So the one option says, okay, give me the discount. And then the other one says exit. And we've tested this extensively, but I can tell you right now that 30% of people that click on the close button will actually change their mind and say, give me the discount code. So what you've done here is you have they close the pop-up because they were in their system one mode. Their system one mode basically doesn't want to be marketed to. And what you did was, by showing them this message, you've slowed them down, which means you've activated their system 2 mode. And their system 2 mode is more rational. And their system 2 mode says, wait a minute, I'm getting a 12% discount. I don't want to buy today. Am I that confident that I don't want to use it in the future? And most people will conclude that, well, you know what, I might as well use it in the future. And so in this example, you've now got 30% more signups than you would have had if you hadn't given the second option to your buyer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I guess you need to be a bit careful with that, because I might actually get pretty annoyed that I couldn't get rid of it. But I see your point.
I had to show a visual example, but you are 100% correct that you really want to figure out the most subtle way to kind of do something. What we would study in this case is we actually study we would study not just the sign up rate. We would also study what is the quality of the lead. So if we're getting more leads, but they're lower quality leads, we will actually cancel this program. So there's a whole bunch of things we can do as marketers to make sure that we want to market just enough and no more. So I would only do this I would only do this in cases where it's appropriate, but I want to show a visual example so to illustrate this. And this doesn't have to be done through pop-ups only. It can be applied in a whole variety of ways.
Got it.
The next one is that we need motivation to break habits. We've already talked about this. It's always easy for the buyer to stick with the status quo, which is, whatever I'm doing today, I can continue doing that tomorrow. It's not like, let me put it this way. Your product it's not like I wasn't getting the job done before I discovered your product. So whatever your product might be an automatic baseball throwing machine. Well, before I considered buying your automatic baseball throwing machine, I had my nephew or my cousin or my friends throw the baseball so I can hit it. So I'm already getting the job done, and it's always easier for me to continue having my friend throw the baseball than to buy a machine. So we have to make a very strong argument as to why that's not a good idea, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
So how do you do that? I mean, that's a very important point you made. So like, I don't want to just sort of leave it at that. So, I think that's, do you then just explicitly address that this is why you are better than the existing solution? How do you solve this?
Yeah, so I mean, like here, if you look at this example, this is for a long-term food storage product. So it's like a food that you can buy, food supply you can buy for your home. And people buy food supplies for their home for uncertain future events. So the simplest thing that the buyer might do, so even though they're on your website, which means that they have some intrinsic need to meet this uncertainty, or they're concerned about it, there's a voice in their head that's saying, well, I've never really needed to buy an emergency food supply, so why do I need it? Like, why do I feel confident I need it? So there's this verbal chatter going on in the mind of the buyer. So what we've written over here is we've added just a simple line that says, it's tempting to hope one never has to be in an emergency situation. And 9 times out of 10, that's the case for most of us. Again, this is an implied message where we're saying, we didn't state it, but it's implied that 1 out of 10 times you're going to be screwed. And just that nudge will help the user, help the buyer consider that, okay, wait a minute, I think this makes sense.
So Rishi, I'm seeing this pattern quite a lot of the implied message.
Yes, absolutely. This is a very common central theme to any of the copywriting we do.
Right.
So yeah, so this will be one example. There are dozens of other examples, but the basic idea here is that, for example, for the baseball example, I just thought about this right now. If I was selling a baseball throwing machine and I was competing against, my neighbor who I bug every time to throw, pitch 60 baseballs, I could make the argument that, you want to practice baseball in your terms at your time so you can be the best athlete, and this machine will be available for you all the time. So maybe that's the argument, right? That you don't have to depend on your neighbor coming helping you pitch the ball. So I'm sure there are other clever ways of doing it, but I think as a marketer, all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help your audience understand that, okay, how do I get my customers to break their habit and build an argument? I think your audience is sophisticated enough to be able to craft a really compelling argument. I think the only value that I bring is I've helped them recognize that this is something they need to address, and I'm sure they'll figure out creative ways of doing it.
Yeah, I'm already inspired. Let's keep going.
Okay, the next one is that we like interacting. This is again almost like a counter copywriting example. So I'll show you an example. This is something we've tested extensively as well. So in this case, the client is selling a very complicated air purifying machine, which costs hundreds of dollars. And there's a lot of technical details that we had to cover. So naturally, the product page is very long and there was lots of technical details. And as marketers, we had to have a debate and say, well, what is the average attention span of buyers? What is this average, what is the average capacity buyers have for technical details? How many of our buyers are looking for technical details versus not looking for technical details? And we're trying to find a compromise. Unfortunately, and I don't know if you guys have heard this, but a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So when you try to find a compromise, you're actually creating a garbage solution oftentimes. So our big aha moment was that why are we kind of breaking our heads trying to understand how much time a buyer has? So my point here is that some people might be looking to buy an air purifier, but they don't have 15 minutes to read technical specs. But other people might be coming to buy an air purifier and they are specifically looking to read technical specs because they're very technical buyers. So how do we address both of these audiences? So what we did was we designed this version of the page where it simply says no other air purifier does as much this quietly. We've tested them all. Again, we've an implied statement over here. But the key insight over here for this test was we added this button over here. How much time do you have? If people said, I have 2 minutes, we actually show them a much shorter version of the sales copy. And if people say, I have time, we're actually showing a much longer version. And the control was just the longer version. And this version of it did 30% more effect in sales of this product, not overall conversion rates, but this specific model than the control. So just adding this one option had a psychological effect on conversion rates.
And again, it goes back to your point about like knowing the customer, right? So in this case, it's clearly down to do with time and whether they need to look at the spec sheet or just buy a random purifier. But maybe for jewelry, it's something a little bit different.
Correct. That's absolutely right. Your interaction is going to change. So for a jewelry website, you can, we've done lots of interaction experiments. So one of the interaction experiments we've done is called priming. So price priming. So the idea here is if you're selling jewelry, let's say you're a premium jewelry seller. Now we know that consumers by default, system 1 mode, we're always looking at the lowest prices. System 2 mode basically is telling us, hey, listen, low price can also equate to bad quality. So we've done a test where when you come to that jewelry website, we actually have a floating banner that says, when you're buying jewelry, I care most about, and there are 2 buttons, lowest price and best quality. And what we find is 98% of people will click on best quality, and correspondingly, people that click on best quality have a higher conversion rate than the control group. So just by priming them, we're actually getting them to become more price insensitive. So that's how an example of how you use interaction in that scenario. Whereas in this case of Oransi, we used it for time. Make sense?
Yeah, totally. That's a good example.
People love knowing that they've stumbled onto something interesting. I've got 2 examples over here. Again, I won't talk about this because we've run over, but you guys can pause the video and read it. We know that people are narcissistic. Here's a good example. So it says over 63 million households own a dog in the US. Only 1% of those households buy raw pet food for their best friend. So here we're basically kind of challenging the user to say, are you in that exclusive group of 1%? Most people have this very high opinion about themselves. They want to be in that group. We hate bad news. There are tons of examples of this, but the principal example I'll give of this is free shipping test. So we know that consumers love free shipping, But free shipping is a fallacy, because in order to give free shipping, you have to adjust prices, and it's not like the shipping carriers don't give free shipping. So we've done tons of testing where when someone doesn't qualify for free shipping, we basically pose a question that says, why isn't shipping free? And we explain to them why shipping isn't free. And what we find is by just explaining to them why shipping isn't free, we're able to persuade 13% of them to actually still buy from us, even though they didn't qualify for free shipping. So people hate bad news, but if you can, what we call narrative control, if you can kind of manage that narrative, then they're actually likely to reconsider. And that is the end of my presentation. The one final thing I'll share over here is that for those of you who have a cell phone or whatever, you can actually take a picture of this smart code and it'll actually take you to my sign up page on my blog. And if you're interested in these kind of ideas, once a week, I share one idea through email, simple digestible idea. And you can unsubscribe obviously whenever you want, but I think you'll like some of the examples that we have because we're constantly inventing new ideas around these core themes. So if you like the themes, I have tons of examples to share with you guys.
Thank you so much, Rishi. This has been very, very helpful. Especially, I think all of us are guilty of one of those points which you mentioned that maybe we didn't take more use of. I think for everyone that's stuck with us, hit pause and like go get a notepad out and like go look at your homepage or the page which has had the most copy and try to give yourself a bit of a diagnostic, right? And see where maybe there are things which you can rephrase and maybe there are sections which you can add, which you didn't have before. And go do that test. And I'm sure Rishi would love, so would I love to hear if you had any positive results from that.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much, Rishi. I think we've already shared how people can get in touch with you, but maybe just in case people missed that, you can just talk, maybe they can just repeat your website again. And I'm sure people are going to have lots of questions for you.
Yeah, so my website is frictionless-commerce. So frictionless-commerce.com. That takes you to my homepage. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, there is a sign up option on the homepage. It's really hard to find actually, but another way to get to it is to frictionless-commerce/join, JOIN, and that takes you to my sign up page. And you can sign up that way. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So if any of you who are on LinkedIn, you can search for my name, RISHI space RAWAT. And you'll find my post there. You can follow me there as well. So would love to connect with anyone who's interested in this topic.
Rishi, sounds like you've got something to fix on your website then to make it easier for people to find.
Well, the cobbler's shoes have the cobbler's children have no shoes, right? So I never look at my own website. So please don't judge me. Don't judge my work based on my website. Is my advice.
I think that's it's something which we're all guilty of. I mean, we are always talking about homepage personalization and how we can optimize your homepage, but all the things that you're talking to me about, I'm already thinking how much better we could make it. So it was great having you, Rishi, and I hope we can talk again soon.
This is wonderful. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.